Welcome to this morning's Education, Children and Young People's Executive. I would like to just welcome Joel and Jessie as our pupil reps. You will see that there's a report that later on that will formally go through the process, but very welcome, good to see you. I hope we'll be gentle with you on this occasion, but we will work with you in the service to look at seeing what you would like to see brought forward in the agenda, and hope you'll be able to participate in the next meeting. Okay, do we have any apologies?
No, Convener, no apologies have been submitted.
Do we have any declarations of interest? No, none have been submitted. I'm just very aware that there's been a high press interest around the issue of RAC, the aerated concrete. So I'm going to ask Mr. Greenhorn just to say a few short words in relation to that. I don't intend to take questions at this stage, but more information will be made available as it becomes available, and Mr. Greenhorn will explain that. Thank you, Gary.
Okay, thanks, Convener. Okay, in terms of the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete shortened to RAC, in terms of the council's position, just to let members and the executive know that we're currently undertaking a survey across the entire property estate to identify the presence of RAC in any of our buildings. To date, from initial investigations, no buildings have yet within the council estate been identified as containing RAC. Detailed surveys are still going on just now, and once complete, should any buildings be identified as containing RAC, they'll be confirmed together with an appropriate action plan imposed by the council to remedy the situation. Members will be interested that there's a FAQ, question and answer, will be on the council's website, and any updates to that in terms of the information when we find it will be posted on the FAQ side of the council website as well. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Gary. And as there already been a member briefing, that will be continued to be updated in due course. We'll go to the minute of the meeting.
Convener, sorry, can I just, I know you said no questions, but can I just...
I did say no questions.
Can I clarify something then? Do we know what the position is with Forth Valley Health Board and the likes of the college as well?
At this stage, I don't think we can make any comment in relation to that. We don't have that information to hand at this moment in time. There'll be more information will come out in due course. Okay, I'm moving on to the minute.
Information as well, then.
I did say there would be no questions on this, and I did say there would be more information issued in due course.
Point of information. Obviously, the public and parents are greatly concerned, and for to say that their elected members can't ask a question on it or a point of information does not serve our communities well at all. The PFI and PPI schools.
Councillor Spears, I'm sorry that I said no questions, and as there is no actual item on the agenda, there has been a statement made. There's information available on the council's website, and indeed there's been a member briefing. More information will be issued as soon as we are able to provide that, and that is all that we're going to say on the matter at this time. We'll move on to the minute. Any thing raised in the minute of the meeting of the 30th of May? We're happy to agree. Thank you. Moving on to the rolling action log. Mr. Moody.
Thank you, Convener. And as usual, the rolling action log provides information where there are outstanding requests for reports for the committee. The rolling action log is up to date, and where there's any reason for a report not coming to the expected committee, comments are included in the explanation. The rolling action log is available for members to ask questions in relation to the items.
Okay, are there any questions relating to the rolling action log? Reverend Rowell.
Thanks, Convener. Just to note that under the first one, 537, it says that no inspections have taken place since 27th October 2020. What it looked to me as if the end of it the papers that there were inspections. So I just wondered if you'd want to comment on that.
Okay. You want to, Rona, would you like to clarify that?
Yes, thank you. They were suspended in 2020 in March. The inspection programme recommenced in August 2022, and that's what we're bringing to you today, is the summary of the inspection processes from 22 to 23.
Okay. So that wording is correct then?
Yep. Like Mr. Moody will come in and just maybe clarify the wording for us.
I think Reverend Rowland makes a useful point in relation to item 537. I think that needs to be updated, and it will be updated by the next meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Spears.
608 on page 11, it was agreed that future report, SQA attainment Falkirk Secondary School 2022. But the report that's been given to us today is not going to give us the results for individual schools 2004. I don't believe that was the agreement made at the last meeting.
That's not really an issue to be brought up into the rolling action log. That's something that you can maybe read in the report, Councillor Spears. Okay, if there's no further questions on the rolling action log, we will move on to item 5, which is education, children and young people's and pupil representatives. Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And you've already welcomed from the Chair, Jessie and Joel, but this is the formal report asking the committee to appoint them both as the pupil representatives on the committee, and the recommendation is at paragraph 2.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. So I've already welcomed our 2 pupil representatives. I'll just move the report as is and look forward to working with them going forward. Councillor Sinclair.
Yeah, happy to second and welcome to the committee.
Okay, thank you. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is the annual summary of inspection by the Care Inspectorate Children's Care Home Services. And I'll move across to Sarah Lacey.
Good morning to all. This report provides Education, Children and Young People Executive with details of Falkirk Council's regulated residential childcare services, which were recently inspected by the Care Inspectorate. Section 4 of this report provides some background information regarding the role and function of the Care Inspectorate. Our registered services must meet the National Care Standards, which set out standards of care that people should expect, and these are attached for your information at Appendix 3. If a service is not meeting these standards, the Act gives the Care Inspectorate powers to make the service improve. Information gathered by the Care Inspectorate informs the Scottish Government and the public on how well Scotland's social care services are performing. We have 2 children's houses and both were inspected earlier this year. Wallace Crescent, which cares for 5 young people, and Tremana, also registered to care for 5 youngsters. It's worth noting that as part of our Closer to Home strategy, there was a service redesign that involved a change to the remit of Wallace Crescent from short-term assessment to providing long-term care, mirroring Tremana. This redesign aligned the model of care across both houses, ensuring that relationship-based practice sits at the heart of all that we do. Additionally, staff rotas were reviewed to support the above changes and to ensure greater consistency for our young people. As section 4.2, we highlight that both services were inspected using a new quality framework, that's for care homes for children and young people and school care accommodation. Both inspections were unannounced and the services were inspected against the key question, how well do we support children and young people's wellbeing? And within that, there are 4 quality indicators that we were measured against. Inspection involves a number of factors, and I've included some from the list that we've provided in the report, and that's obtaining the views of children and young people, of family, of staff, managers and other professionals, observing staff practice and interaction with young people, examining young people's records, and also, really importantly, how young people are informed about their rights. In section 5, you'll see that both services have been rated as good from these recent inspections with no requirements or recommendations. We've listed some of the strengths and comments and key messages recorded by the inspector taken from both reports. The young people at Wallace Crescent told the inspector that the team was sound, that they were understanding, and that staff genuinely cared and worried about them. At Tremana, one young person told inspectors, "It's clear that they do care for me and I care for the staff just as much." A young person who previously lived at Tremana described the staff team as like family. The outcome of the inspection evidenced that Falkirk Council is meeting its commitment to our children and young people to keep the promise. The manager and our staff are committed to the care of not just the children who currently live in our houses, but to all of those who did before them. The relationships are investments for the long term, and the good ratings we've achieved will be built on for the future. I'd like to refer Executive to the recommendations at section 2, and I'm delighted to be joined by Pauline Connolly today, who manages both of the children's houses and will be really pleased to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sarah. I'll go to Councillor Colley.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I think the report says it all, and Sarah has said it all. But I think we need to pay tribute and thank all of the staff in both the services. Their commitment to children and young people they work with is clear from these inspections, and picking up some of the words of young people asked. It's picking up some of the words the young people have highlighted, like understanding, genuinely cared and worrying, and like family. I mean, these are so important. And that from the inspections themselves about warm and nurturing relationships where children and young people are encouraged to influence services and their own experiences. And I also noted around the support for education. The core words of stability, lasting relationships, accessibility, respectful and trauma-informed also speak to the staff's commitment to delivering the promise. So I think just very finally, just to say a well done to all, and I look forward to seeing the work that's building on this excellent inspection report.
Thank you for that, Councillor Colley. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Convener. As ever, it's a pleasure to second Councillor Colley. I'm reassured by a number of the areas of this report, but particularly the comments of the Care Inspectorate around the development days with staff and young people, allowing both to influence the development of this critical service. It is obvious that this service, with young people's opinions at its heart, has produced a service that young people take with them in their lives when they have actually left the support. The personal comment written on a card is both worrying in that a young person needed the support, but it is reassuring that they had the right support at the right time from a member of staff when they needed it. I know there's still work to be done, but I'd like to thank both the staff and the young people for the positive outcome in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes. I'll open the item up now for any questions or comments. Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Convener. Hi, Pauline. Yeah, just echoing what the other councillors have already said. Absolute testament to the services that you've got such a good report. It's well deserved. I've always been really impressed when I've visited the services as well, so well done. Excuse me. I just have a couple of questions at reference in the report that there's trauma responsive practice taking place, which, you know, is the right direction that we should all be moving in. Is there specific training available to staff or council family and friends that you're able to access to develop that?
Molly?
Thanks, Councillor Patterson. Yeah, so all our staff have been involved in the Link Living Trauma Informed Practice training, and we've also got access to Level 3 Trauma Informed training through the council as well. So that's been really fortunate. So completely embedded across the both services, and we can really see how that's influenced the care that our young people are getting.
Brilliant. That's really reassuring. I think as well, the only other question I really had was, are you able to advise what the vacancy levels are like? I know that the staff are really accommodating and they do everything they can to make sure that there's consistency of care. How are the vacancies currently? And if there are a few, do we have a timeline to look at having those filled.
So we've been really fortunate in the past couple of months. We've had a cohort of new staff that have come in to cover a lot of the vacancies. We've still got 4 vacancies outstanding, but we have had the service redesign. So once the management structure is complete, we can move forward with that. So hopefully we're going to be at full capacity by March next year.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's just really positive to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. Page 21, 5, considerations. You say both services were rated good and there were no requirements or recommendations. Can I then ask you what steps are being taken to improve the service to take it up to excellent?
Thanks, Councillor Spears. So obviously we've been we've been inspected on the new framework. So we've seen this a lot. It's nationwide really. We've inspected, all services are now inspected with a new framework. So we've not been inspected for 2019. So over obviously the pandemic. So our current inspection 2023 was the new framework where we were graded 4. We're aware that, the services went through redesign. We've got Wallace Crescent that's now moved to long-term in line with Tremana, and realigning staff rotas and also developing our new promise model. So we've developed across both services a new model of care, which we call the promise model, and that's based around culture, relationships and practice. We've got a fully embedded development plan and action plan to support the recommendations. So that's about trauma-informed practice. It's about the continuation of relationships when young people move on from care. And more recently, we have got a charity, Friends of Tremana, that is able to financially support young people when they've moved on lifelong. And we've just had agreement from that board that we're going to be moving to Friends of Tremana and the Braes, which will incorporate the young people moving on from Wallace Crescent, and they'll be able to be financially supported as well. So we're hopeful with these actions that we will be going up to excellent or not very good.
So I take it that there were no requirements or recommendations. I take it you've not taken that to heart and you've put other stuff in place because we're trying to improve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. On page 36 of the report, it has a summary of the promise. And a lot of the terms in the summary are about quality of relationships based on values. Reading this, it's quite subjective on what relationship, what's a good relationship, what's a good value. Is there anywhere that we can go as elected members to get more context so we know what the promise is aiming to? Thank you.
Sarah.
Thank you. Yes, we can certainly work with our elected members who are care experienced young people considered to be their family and friends to identify any requirements that you have to develop a sense of what relationships could look like and how we can make sure that that particular cohort of children, young people, young adults are able to benefit from strengthening relationships. So I'm very happy to perhaps pick that up with you out with committee.
Perfect, thank you.
I think that the relationships depend on particularly the cohort you're dealing with, and it can vary. That's why the promise is left so broad and not prescriptive, so that that can then be developed to suit the particular needs of the individuals concerned. Okay, the Reverend Rollo.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to say well done. It's just great report, and it's really good to see that in the response to challenging behaviour, that there's a trauma-informed response. It's really good to understand where people are coming from, and I think well done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reverend Rollo. I'll just add my thanks to the work of the staff in particular. In this particular sector, it can be very difficult, can be very challenging, but the quality of the care and just the responses that have come from the young people are credit to the work that's going on there. And it's been over a difficult time because you've been impacted by COVID as well. So very well done. Please take my thanks back to the unit and to the staff. And I know that you'll be also looking to continuous improvement to make sure that the experiences improve for all those to whom we are caring for within Falkirk District. So thank you very much. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7, it's the Child Protection Committee annual report. And it's with, welcome Tony.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name's Tony McLaughlin. I'm the lead officer for Falkirk's Child Protection Committee. I'm here today to speak to the annual report for 2021 and 22, and that's really to give assurances to the executive on the arrangements that are in place to protect Falkirk's children. Now, we're a bit out of sync in relation to reporting to the executive, and we'd hope to return in early 2024 with the 2022-23 annual report. Really what I'm here to do today is to chart the progress of the Child Protection Committee, but it is a retrospective look. Important just to note the strategic link to the Council's overarching plan is that the work of the Child Protection Committee assists the service in meeting the priority area of supporting stronger and healthier communities. In relation to the national policy context of the work of the Child Protection Committee, it's a requirement of the National Guidance for Child Protection in Scotland, which was updated in 2021. And there's also national guidance for Child Protection Committees and Chief Officers Groups, which stipulate that the local authority should establish a Child Protection Committee and it must be governed by a Public Protection Chief Officers Group. Now, Falkirk's Child Protection Committee, it's a locally based interagency strategic partnership, and it's made up of representatives from all agencies involved in child protection work in Falkirk and across Forth Valley. Some of the key roles of the Child Protection Committee include public information, engagement and participation. So that's about awareness raising, identifying, responding to child protection concerns, strategic planning and connection, and that's involving our interagency partners within Falkirk, but again also across a Forth Valley wide basis. There's also continuous improvement and quality assurance work, so that's the scrutiny work with audits, surveys, looking at the data that's available, and of course annual reporting to ensure the responsibilities that are set out in the national guidance are being met. And our Child Protection Committee does that through its substructure and through its business and improvement plan. Now, hopefully you've seen within the report there's 6 agreed strategic priority areas of the committee's business plan, and those look at assessment and planning of risk. It looks at ensuring that we've got a competent and skilled workforce and that the child protection system is effectively resourced. We also look at including our children and families in decision making and service design, ensuring their expectations are met and that the system is continuously evaluated. Another key part is in relation to our multi-agency policy and guidance, making sure that's been reviewed and implemented to deliver best practice. Now, to support the work of the committee, we've got 6 operational subgroups that report directly to the Child Protection Committee, and 3 of those are Forth Valley wide, and hopefully you've seen that structure within the report. Now, the governance of the Child Protection Committee is the responsibility of Falkirk's Public Protection Chief Officers Group, and that's chaired by our Council's Chief Executive. Members include Chief Officer, representatives from NHS Forth Valley, Falkirk Council, Police Scotland. And the Chief Officers Group also reports into the wider Community Planning Partnership. And I think the important part of the parts of the annual report are where it discusses the various challenges and successes that have been experienced by the partnership across the reporting period. So there's been a number of challenges which have already been touched on today that's led to a number of adverse situations, and it's exacerbated, I think, some of the circumstances for many of the children and families that we work with. That includes the cost of living crisis, the impact of poverty on the children and the families that we work with, workforce pressures, including the recruitment and retention challenges, which I know was brought to a previous executive and there was discussion around that, and of course the enduring impact of COVID-19. Now again, this relates to the reporting period 2021 to 22, when the legacy of COVID was likely more relevant than it is today. But I think what we'd like to highlight as well is the key successes that are contained within the report. I would hope you would agree that the partnership's demonstrated remarkable resilience and commitment to driving forward improvement actions despite the challenges across the 2021-22 period. The report does detail some of those successes, which I'll just touch on here at the moment, but that includes the establishment of the initial response team, which has led to improvements in child protection responses, meeting expected timescales that are set out within the national guidelines. There's been introduction of the EIRD system, that's the electronic interagency referral discussions, and that's effectively triaging of responses to child protection concerns. There's also been locality learning sessions involving the workforce and communities of practice, continual improvement work, the rollout of Forth Valley's pre-birth pathway with a new guidance document and assessment tool also, which helps us to ensure the safety and welfare of vulnerable unborn children are prioritised in Falkirk. And there's also a number of other areas in relation to new integrated assessments, use of chronologies, and the development of work across Forth Valley to progress the implementation of the National Child Protection Guidance, Scottish Child Interview Model and the Bairns House Standards. Now, the report also provides some information in relation to some of the data that Child Protection Committee uses as part of its improvement and quality assurance work. It's referred to the national minimum data set that's used across Scotland. Now, the data evidences there's been the number of children's names on the Child Protection Register decreased during the reporting period, and that actually brought Falkirk into alignment with the national average for those statistics. There was some scrutiny work that was undertaken by the committee to make sure that they understood the reasons for this change, which was actually related to some positive focused improvement work that was undertaken by the interagency partnership. Just to note that the Child Protection Committee will continue to ensure regular monitoring of child protection data. It will consider any emerging issues requiring closer scrutiny and intervention, and is laid out within the report, the priorities of the committee as we've moved into 2022-23. I've certainly included the implementation of the National Child Protection Guidance across Forth Valley, reviewing and streamlining of the Child Protection Committee and its structure, and the continuation of raising awareness within our communities of child protection concerns, and work with wider strategic groups to deliver effective systems that identify, manage and reduce risk. And of course, the most important areas is that ongoing work in relation to consultation with our children and families on the design and the delivery of child protection services. So as I noted earlier, we'd hope to bring back the annual report for 2022-23 early in the new year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, take any comments, but I understand from discussions at the pre-agenda meeting that the CPC would have some input to the lunch and learn sessions, I think, that are coming up, which will hopefully provide some scope to discuss that in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tony. I'll go to Councillor Colley.
Thank you. So again, I'll be quite brief. It's clear from the report the depth and breadth of work across all the partners in supporting and protecting Falkirk's children. It's been challenging times with the pandemic, and we know that the impact of the pandemic was not equal, and for those living in poverty it was significantly more challenging, and then adding a cost of living crisis on top has heaped pressures upon pressures, not just on families but on delivering services. But despite this, the partnership continues to rise to the challenges, developing improvements as set out in the report. Particularly looking at on page 61, the initial response team, which the committee have been very supportive of, managing even more referrals, but acting at the right time and getting the right response to those referrals. And also I was quite interested on page 63 about taking the opportunity to identify gaps, and the gap around early identification of pre-births and getting support early and improving outcomes for babies and mums. And I think that's an example of the great partnership working, and how officers across the different partners are identifying the opportunities available. So I think just to say a recognition of the huge amount of work that's going on and a commitment of staff across the partnership, and just to offer my thanks to everyone involved.
Thank you, Councillor Colley. I'm happy to second the report and add my thanks, and just highlight that this is an interagency partnership. It's not Falkirk Council that delivers this on its own, but it does go to demonstrate the strength of the relationship with partners, the level of delivery that we have in that child protection sphere. I just want to, again, pass on my thanks to all that's been involved in doing that. We need to recognise that this report is actually 21-22. It is a retrospective report. In seconding the report, I will open it up, but just to remind people that detailed questions should be kept for the lunch and learn session, where much more information can be openly discussed with members. So any questions, if I could ask you to keep it very much to the strategic level and not into individual cases, as it would be appropriate to do so. If that happens, I will stop members and refer them to others to take that forward. But I will now open it up for any questions or comments. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I have 3 questions. The first one is on page 40, 5.1. You stated that some things were out of sync. I didn't quite follow that. But on 5.1, could you please expand on the detail? And my next 2 questions are on 7.5. Do you think a poverty impact assessment is needed for this area? I think that's pretty strategic. And an EPI, why is this not needed? EPIA, why is this not needed?
Tony.
There was a number of questions there, so thank you for those. Just when
You're welcome.
When you queried around it being out of sync, it was simply, as our convener just noted there, that the report is for the 2021-22 period. So really we would have expected that report to have came to the executive before now. And that's what I'd noted at the beginning. We'd hoped to bring the 2022-23 report back early in the new year to revert back into that expected reporting timescale.
In relation to the EPIA?
Sorry, and the other questions?
Thanks, Sarah.
Yes, in relation to the EPIA, sorry, Councillor Spears, I'm just having a quick look at the cover report. So we've said an equality and poverty impact assessment is not required. I will confirm the position on that. I expect that there would have been the initial quality impact assessment undertaken and determined at that stage that it wasn't required.
So you're saying it's not required?
Okay, Councillor Spears.
Councillor
Spears, Mr. Moody's going to come in with further information on that.
Yes, thank you, Convener. It's just to confirm that because of the nature of the report, it's primarily providing information to the Education, Children and Young People Executive and providing assurance rather than requiring a decision which causes any policy change or resource allocation. There's no equality or poverty impact assessment required to support this particular report, and that's consistent across the approach to all council reports.
Can I ask a legal representative then, what would be the best way to go about getting that report? Do you think there should be a motion comes to council, or?
No, I don't think so, Convener. The requirement to have the quality and poverty impact assessment flows from our legal duties under the Act and the regulations made under it. And in my view, they're not required in relation to a report of this kind. So I think that's as far as I can go, but it's always open to members to bring motions to council on issues that are of concern to them.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener. I would just echo the congratulations to all the partners involved and the good partnership working that was done in such a very difficult period that you're reporting on here. I just have a couple of questions. First of all, you mentioned the reducing numbers of young people on the register, and that this was a result of some of the focused work that was done. I wonder if you could say a little more about that. Well, I'm aware that the issue of the number of young people on the register is a matter of some debate as to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing when it goes up or down. But it would be useful to know a bit more about the focused work that has gone on there. And my second question is in relation to the reviewing and streamlining of the structure. I wonder if you could say a little more about how that's planned to go.
Okay, thank you. Tony.
Sure, thanks, Councillor Hannah. In relation to the child protection registration and those statistics, there was, as I touched on earlier, some scrutiny work that was undertaken to look at that in more detail to help us understand what was going on. The outcome of that scrutiny work was presented to our Chief Officers Group back in December of last year. I touched on it, there was some child protection improvement work that was undertaken, and that included, as part of our Closer to Home project, there was a rollout of the pre-birth guidance and tool. There was the integrated child assessment and plan framework that was rolled out to help practitioners look at more of an evidence base for the assessments that they were undertaking. There was the initial response team also, so given a more focused look at our child protection work also. And there was a rolling programme of risk assessment, analysis and training, so really making sure that our workforce, was skilled, competent and able to make really accurate and proportionate assessments of child protection referrals. Now, in addition to that as well, there was a review of our activity around child protection planning meetings, used to be known as child protection case conferences, and a real focus that they would only go ahead if you had a full and comprehensive assessment undertaken. So that was really enabled the conferences to make, again, accurate and proportionate decisions in relation to whether a child's name should or should not be placed on the child protection register or not. There was also some focus work around the assessment and definition of the risk factors that would be utilised and the reasons as to why you would place a child's name on the child protection register. So there was a shift away from recording historic factors to the more dynamic risk factors in the here and the now that would indicate that a child would be likely to be at risk of significant harm. In addition to that, there was some work done in relation to children being involved in a number, in dual processes, whether that be their names being on the child protection register, in addition to any other statutory measures that were in place. So, for instance, if a child was subject to a compulsory supervision order, for instance, but also child protection registration, so whether there was any merits in that or whether we were exposing children and families to unnecessary processes. So that was another factor that's contributed to the reduction in the number of children's names being on the register. I think that's that, a summary of some of the improvement work that's been undertaken.
A fairly thorough summary. Thank you very much. And I did ask if you could say a little more about this, the streamlining of the structure. That would be useful to know what you have in mind.
Yes, hopefully, as you will have seen from the annual report, which details that the current structure with the 6 subgroups, 3 of them being Forth Valley wide. Now, the reasoning as to why the substructure was reviewed, there were too many, effectively, groups, subgroups of the Child Protection Committee, which was diluting, I think, a lot of the work that was being undertaken. So, through a process of reducing the number of groups, improving the focus and their ability to prioritise on the improvement work. That's been the main focus of realigning those groups. So we now have the safeguarding groups that looks at our initial referral discussions, missing persons, the interagency referral discussions, the child interview model in Bairnshouse. Also, we have our other subgroups, which includes our learning development group, one that looks at learning reviews, previously would have been known as serious case reviews. And we also have 2 other groups looking at policies and procedures, public information and engagement, and another group which is focused on quality improvement and assurance work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Reverend Rowell.
Just thank you for your report. Just a point of clarification under 5.2 bullet point 7, review of the use of chronologies across the partnership. What is that, timelines, or what is that? Is that a specific thing with a capital C? Is there like some kind of data on under chronologies? Just clarification of what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we've actually been doing in Falkirk is we've looked at what they call the Pan-Lothian model. So it's a model of chronology they use. And a chronology is basically a list of significant events that have occurred in a child's life. It's a helpful tool that's used to inform risk assessment, risk management. And the key reason is why we use chronologies is to help us to identify any patterns, any emerging issues, to allow us to really target our interventions to support and protect our children and young people.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
Thank you. And Councillor Nimmo.
Thanks, convener. And thanks for your report, Tony. Under the recommendations, it's citing significant challenges. Now, if you look over the page on page 40, there seems to be workforce pressures. Now, it's already been mentioned that the number of children involved is reducing. Can you maybe just expand on what the workforce pressures actually are and how you're trying to resolve them?
Absolutely, the workforce pressures, I think as they're noted in the report in relation to its recruitment and retention issues within the workforce. I understand that's been brought to a previous executive, some of those discussions around the efforts that were being made. And certainly, hopefully you will have seen, locally and nationally, the adverts that are out for advanced practitioners within Falkirk, and the salary rate for that is at a higher level to try and recruit more social workers to be attracted to come and work in Falkirk. But yeah, absolutely acknowledge the number of children's names on the Child Protection Register in the reporting period for 2021 to 22 was decreasing. But when I come back, hopefully to speak to you early in the new year, you'll see a picture of those numbers increasing again.
Okay, thanks for that, Tony.
Is there not also something around the complexity of the cases that social workers are now having to deal with, because they're very multifaceted as well, and therefore it can be very time consuming to be able to deal with a case properly?
Absolutely, convener, as it's noted in the report, some of the emerging issues, the reasons as to why children's names have been placed on the Child Protection Register relate to parental mental health issues, neglect, substance misuse, and there's a range of other areas that contribute also. But yes, those are very complex areas, very demanding, time consuming, and emotionally and physically for the workforce also. Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, convener. It follows on Councillor Nimmo's question and point 7.4 in the report in terms of risk and the resource pressures and how they are increasing. And it says to mitigate these, it will ensure regular monitoring of data, interagency reports and analysis. Do you see any more avenues for pressure on resources to increase in the upcoming years?
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. I'll take that question just because we're kind of broadening the picture slightly from specifics around child protection. But yeah, there are a number of competing factors. So we are seeing really kind of significant, anticipated, rightly, expectations around the implementation of the promise with GIRFIC refresh. With developments that Tony has already highlighted around Scottish Child Interview model. So there's a number of legislative and policy changes nationally driven, which are, we can clearly see, the right things for children, young people and their families, but that we are required to implement. I mean, to take the workforce with us as we work through all of the implementation of different models, strategies, policies, impact of changes around legislation also.
And just following that, do you think there's a risk of spreading ourselves too thin because there's so much pressure being put on for these changes?
Yeah, those risks are relevant. We're very mindful of them in terms of leadership of social work. We do our level best to ensure that we are pulling together all the common themes of all of these strategies and new approaches to be implemented. As I referenced to answer the first part of your question, these are all about improving outcomes for children, young people and families. So we are very aligned as a profession to ensure that we're taking these forward in a meaningful way. So we do as much as we can to try and build pathways together, not to see things in a linear fashion, but to push them together, take all of the strengths and the benefits out of each of them, and introduce them to the workforce in a positive, measured way. But we're not very good as stopping doing some of the things that we may no longer be able to do nor required to do. We tend to try and do everything. So I think there's some work that needs to be done around all of that while we strengthen our workforce. And you've heard about some of the strategies that we've got in place to strengthen numbers and reduce vacancies, etc.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, can we agree the report?
Agreed.
And we'll look forward to early next year, the following update on the Child Protection Committee. Okay, I'm going to just take a 5-minute break to allow Sarah and our team, if anybody's wishing to leave, and we'll come back into session then. Okay, thank you. Okay, colleagues, if we can come back into session, please. Okay, thank you. We're now on to item 8, and it's the SQA attainment in Falkirk Secondary Schools 2023, and I will go to Rona J. Thank you, Rona.
Thank you, Convener. Good morning, councillors, and thanks for the opportunity to bring this paper to you at committee. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the input from essential teams, the continuing work of staff, and of course the hard work and endeavours of our young people. And on that note, I'm particularly pleased that we have experts in the House in terms of Jessie and Joel with us this morning on this very thing. I appreciate that you've all read the report, and I'll try to focus on the salient points therein. The purpose is to provide you with information on the initial analysis of Scottish Qualifications Authority attainment within Falkirk Secondary Schools for 2023. This report accounts for the overall achievements at national qualifications at levels 3, 4 and 5, at level 6 for higher and at level 7 for advanced higher. By February 2024, we will have further insight data which will take account of all Scottish credit and qualifications framework outcomes, all of our school leavers destinations, and will include national and comparator authority figures. These will be reported to you at committee in March 2024. You're asked to note the attainment of our secondary schools at this point and to agree that future report is presented to you in the spring of 2024 to take account of updated and additional SQA and other attainment data. Section 4.1 notes that the current data is limited to SQA national performance only. And 4.2 provides some examples of the types of qualifications and accreditations that young people can achieve through the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, ranging from the Higher National Certificate, HNC, through to Enterprise and Employability Awards. Sections 4.3 and 4.5 provide information about the number of 2023 entries for National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher compared with 2022. It's always pertinent to remember that these are different cohorts of young people, so there will always be a variance. We are particularly pleased to see that the number of young people presented for National 5s increased, especially for those in their 4th year who are sitting exams for the first time. Section 4.5 provides a summary of the adaptations to examinations and assessment processes from the alternative certification model developed in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, through to the 2023 exam diet, which retains some course modifications. To support the ongoing recovery of learning and teaching, in 2024, 28 courses will retain modifications. Sections 5.1 to 5.3 provide you with overall attainment for National 3 to 5, Level 6 Highers and Level 7 Advanced Highers for Falkirk. For Nationals 3 to 5 in 4th year, we're pleased to see the 5% increase at Level 3 and the 8% increase at Level 4 from pre-pandemic levels. The 1% decrease at Level 5 is in line with statistics nationally, but similar to pre-pandemic levels. For all 3 groups of hires in 5th year, we've sustained or improved on pre-pandemic levels, and note the variances from 2022 are slight. It will be interesting for members to see the full picture in March 2024 when the full range of qualifications and accreditations are accounted for. For hires and advanced hires in 6th year, we are in line with or better than pre-pandemic levels. Variance in hires here is greater, and the variance in advanced hires only 1% from 2022. Again, the full range of accreditations and qualifications will be reported in March. Section 5.4 provides detail of the actions taken by local authority officers in partnership with senior leaders and senior face staff to review the 2023 results. This includes quality assurance and quality improvement work on the following: all data as it becomes available, faculty and department action plans and assessment plans, tracking and monitoring of individual pupils, full cohorts and groups of interest, assertive mentoring and support for those young people at risk of not achieving, the use of additional digital and online supports, faculty and subject-specific improvement meetings, using the experience and the expertise of our SQA nominated markers, of whom we have approximately 240 staff, And school improvement team managers work alongside each school to ensure that school improvement plans and department action plans are clear in the focus and steps being taken to ensure all children and young people are well supported, particularly those requiring additional help and support or facing wider challenges. Section 8 is a conclusion, and I apologise for the following errors. It should say 8.1 after 8. It should have PP, per pro person, for and behalf of the Director of Education. As you all know, I am not the Director of Education. And there's a duplication of the final text in the last section. I'd like to finish with the caveat that, as noted in this report, the recovery of learning and teaching from the pandemic is ongoing. Currently, the only year groups of children and young people who have not had their education or experience disrupted or impacted by the pandemic are our current nursery age children, our primary 1 and our primary 2 children. As such, the efforts, resilience and achievements of our young people are all the more commendable. Thank you, and your comments and questions are welcome. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mrs. Jay. I'll go to Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Convener. So I just want to start by saying congratulations to all pupils who sat exams. I think this is a positive report that shows we've got clear, solid foundations across schools in the district. What it also shows is a challenge that has presented itself over the past few years, namely the pandemic and everything that has brought. But what this report shows is the resilience of pupils and the work that they have put in to get to this stage, to achieve what they have on these national qualifications. It also shows the great support and the work of teachers and staff right across the board. Of course, this, as it has been mentioned, is only a snapshot of the SQE national qualifications, and there'll be further reports on attainment come forward at a future date. What also is highlighted in terms of the national conversation that's ongoing within this is it shows that there's a review of education in Scotland in terms of the Hayward Review, the It's Our Future and Skills Review. It's my opinion these are positive reviews and they present a positive outlook of what education in Scotland could look like. And I'd encourage those responsible for those decisions to act swiftly to improve upon the methods by which our students now and in the future can navigate their way through their school career and their achievements, and on the varied and their varied and limitless futures. I think it goes without saying that this is something that this report in particular shows we are clearly in a positive position and have plenty to work on, but that this gives a brief general overview of achievement in Falkirk. And once again, congratulations to our pupils for what they've done and what they've come through, and I look forward to seeing them build on that and move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks to Rona, Councillor Sinclair, and indeed to Reverend Rowler for his chronology question during the last report. Appreciate that one. I agree with everything he has said. This is a very positive report and one which illustrates the hard work and dedication put in by our schools and education departments. Just Thursday past, I was honoured to be invited along to Denny High School to their annual awards ceremony as a guest speaker, and as always left very impressed. Mr Dunn, the head teacher, spoke about the achievements of the pupils receiving awards and indeed about the school's performance, seeing their results improve from pre-COVID figures in 7 of the 9 data levels measured. This is replicated across the area, and as I said, credit should be given to the drive and ethos of excellence promoted by our head teachers, exemplified by the excellent and dedicated staff supported by parents, and most of all the strong positive attitude demonstrated by the pupils across Falkirk District. As Ian says, I look forward to the detailed report coming forward in spring 2024. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. Councillor Spears.
Thank you. I think we all look forward to the data coming forward when it's available. I have asked previous questions about individual schools and their performance and their success, I may say. And I look forward to seeing that all our schools have equal success. but I have been asked by people to ask some questions. I think we've accepted there's a lack of detail in this report regarding especially individual schools, and we have to receive that next year because I believe you're awaiting data becoming available. The total number of entries for the national 5S increased by 2.7% nationally. The total number of entries for the national 5S increased also by 36. Why are we below the national average? And our entries have actually decreased by 1.5%, and the national number of entries for hires has increased by 1.9%. My first question is, why is there a difference?
Okay, Rona.
Thank you, Councillor Spears. It is always interesting to look at the results year on year, but as we said in the report, and we caveat it every year, these are different cohorts of young people. And different cohorts of young people make different choices and perform differently. And as we said in the last section of the report, one of our jobs now is to look at the data that we have from 2023 and to just, as you've asked, look to see why has there been a drop, what are the reasons for that? Is it the choices that young people have made? Is it because young people haven't performed as well as they wanted to? Is it because there were risks or inability of young people to make the presentation they were expected to make before they got to the exam period? So there are lots and lots of reasons for that, and that's our job just now. So the time we get to the report we're going to bring you in 2024, we'll be able to explain to you the reasons for these differences and what we're going to do about them.
Of course, that'll be very interesting. You know, parents have the right to, if they want to move their child to a school that's performing better, so they have the right to know these figures. We as elected members have the right to ask you, and we look forward very much, though it is a much later date after the exams that these figures will be coming forward. So we await with great interest.
Thank you. It's also worth saying that at any time, parents can, of course, go to their school and their head teachers to ask about attainment and progress, and every school has different procedures in place to keep parents informed and updated of young people's progress as they go through the school year. So it doesn't need to wait for these reports for parents and carers. They can, of course, access that information at any time.
Rona, could you possibly just maybe reiterate why we don't have the data on the SQA stuff just now? Because I think there seems to be an impression that we're holding that back for some reason, rather than it being contained within this report.
Certainly. At the moment, we have the first sift of the national qualifications only from the Scottish Qualifications Authority. So that's the qualifications that are noted in this report. When it gets to the end of September, we then get information on all qualifications and credits, which is the SCQF, which is all credits. And that is some of the things that we showed you in, let me go back to the point, I think it's 5.4.2. which outlines some of these different qualifications and accreditations that young people get. So the end of September, we start to see that fuller picture of everything that young people can have, but that's not available to us until then. And the leaver destinations, we do not get that information until February. So we like to bring the reports to you in March because it has everything in it. And by that time, we'll have done all of our quality assurance and discussions with schools, and we'll be able to put a bit of context round about the variances that we might see then.
My concern is you read other local authorities putting that information out, and it seems as though we're delayed in it, and getting that explanation over to the public is really your job, because they want to know.
I'm not entirely sure how accurate that is, because that information doesn't come to any authority until, because it's not our data, and it doesn't come until later on. So I'm sure that information will be conveyed, particularly to parents, through their schools, and again there'll be meetings with parent councils as well, at which information will be shared at an individual school level, and what action they're taking as well. So I think that there's a number of ways that parents can access information. I've got Councillor Hannah, Councillor Bundy, then Councillor Kerr.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Rona, for the report, accepting that it is just a snapshot and it's an early sift. I haven't been a councillor for all that long, but my recollection is the same thing happened last year. We had the initial information in a report, followed by the more detailed, and I look forward to the more detailed information. I also really appreciate you emphasising the importance of other qualifications, because I think that is really important. There's a range of different things that young people may do, and a range of different attainments. And I think it's important that we recognise those attainments across the board. And I think it's very important that we recognise what a great job staff and pupils have done, considering what went through 2020 to 2022, the COVID gap years. I think they have done superbly, and all congratulations need to go to them for that hard work. And I do know that a large part of that has been the work that some of the staff have done in terms of extra study support for young people where it's appropriate. What I would like to ask, though, is for a little more detail about the new tracking and monitoring system that is being looked at, because I think that might answer some of the questions in terms of information available to parents as well as to ourselves.
Okay, Rona.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Hannah, for your comments and your interest in our new system. We previously have information that comes into CMIS, which is our Universal Management Information System, but there was also a previous system called On the Button, and it was slightly unique to every secondary school. So every secondary school used it slightly differently, and there wasn't really any way in that system for us to connect as a service to the data that schools had. So we now have a new system across all of our secondary schools called Progress, and that links to CMIS, and it means that we can look as a service and a centre at consistently grouped data sets across all of our secondary schools, which is excellent. It also is going to be rolled out to all of our primary schools. We're piloting that in one cluster in primary at the moment, so that as we develop this system, this one cluster is going to try it out at primary, and we can iron out any sort of teething problems at this point with a view to rolling it out to all primary schools in 2024. And that means that we'll have one system which goes across all primary and all secondary schools, which gives us a tracking system for young people as they start primary 1 right the way through to 6th year. So that's going to be really helpful. And it also means that we can draw down reports quicker. We don't need to be asking schools for it. We can go in and draw down reports ourselves. And it also means that it's another dimension to, as you said, the different ways of reporting to parents, and that young people can also monitor their progress through this system themselves. So hopefully it'll be a much more continuous and cohesive tracking system for primary and secondary.
Thank you. I look forward to the more detailed information come the new year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. It's just a quick question about the report that will be coming to the Council next year in regards to the data on appeals. Will we get a breakdown on the rate of appeals in each school and the return of successful appeals in each school as well?
Thanks, Councillor Bundy. We don't usually include that as part of the report, but if you've asked that as a question, we could include that as part of the report.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Bundy just stole one of my questions. But with regards to the Progress initiative that Rona just spoke about there, if it's successful, speaking to head teachers, it allows teachers, parents and pupils to monitor, as Rona's already suggested. It allows people to monitor the child's progress all the year round, where they don't have to wait to parent nights to go and see how they're getting on. So hopefully the system will work in the cluster that's getting used at the moment. I just think that's going to be a big plus for especially parents. So I'd just like to thank Rona and the team for the report, and like everybody else, look forward to the main report coming back at the new year. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Okay, just a final comment from myself, just to recognise that this is a very positive report. I think it can't be unsaid that over the last 5 years we have seen continuous improvement, and the good thing is, despite the challenges around COVID, we've managed to sustain that. There will be obviously individual blips because of individual cohorts, and we need to understand that so that we can support those to be able to reach their potential and to go on and do whatever they wish to do. But I think the motivation and the commitment of the staff, as well as the pupils and indeed the parents, to our young people has got to be acknowledged significantly over the last 5 years, has made a real difference, and we'd hope that we will be able to continue that, because we know that our schools are not going to sit back on their laurels. They will look to see that good's good, but good's not good enough, and continue to look to stretch where they can, encourage and support our young people, and let them be able to achieve their lifetime goals. And obviously help them to develop their lifetime goals as well. So with that, I'd be happy to agree the report.
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to a final item, which is item 9. It's a summary of the external scrutiny activity, schools and early learning childcare establishments. And across to Rona.
Thank you again, Convener, and again I'm welcoming the opportunity to bring this paper to you. And once again, I'd like to thank my central teams and acknowledge the significant impact that the focused and strategic work of managers and officers has had in contributing to this incremental and positive improvement, particularly in our external inspection evaluations. I would also like to commend our staff in ELCs, early learning, and our schools for their positive engagement with our programme of training, development and quality assurance. And last but no means least, our children and young people who are cited in the key strengths of our reports regularly. Again, I appreciate that you've read the report, and I'll try to focus on the salient points therein. The purpose is to provide you with an overview of inspection of schools and early learning and childcare establishments by national inspection bodies in the academic session of 22 and 23. You're asked to note the evaluation of our educational establishments in appendices 1 to 3, to note some key points in sections 4.9 and 4.20, and to agree that an overview report on external scrutiny by the Care Inspectorate and Education Scotland HMI is reported to the Education, Children and Young People's Executive on an annual basis. Sections 4.1 to 4.4 provide operational information about how the Care Inspectorate structure and how they carry out their inspections of early learning and childcare centres and classes. And it gives details of the key questions and core quality indicators used from the quality framework for daycare of children and school-aged childcare. Sections 4.6 to 4.7 note the expectation of the Care Inspectorate and the ambition of Children's Services in Falkirk that our establishments will be graded as good or better. 4.8 refers members to Appendix 1 for a summary of the overview of gradings assigned to each establishment in early learning inspected in session 2022 to 23. In 4.9, the bullet points in this section illustrate the positive outcomes for all of our early learning and childcare inspections in session 2022-23. Members are asked to note the high levels of evaluations of very good and that overall we are comfortably exceeding the minimum national standards for the quality of care provided to our children. We're also pleased to report very good progress for an ELCC and ELC class at Scrutiny Committee on the 7th of September. Both of these establishments had a follow-through inspection in 2022, which, like the original, were unannounced. Sections 4.10 and 4.11 note the suspension of inspection programmes in March 2022. Education Scotland HMI. And it also notes the inclusion of 3 schools inspected just prior to this shutdown, and members are directed to Appendix 2 for the overview of gradings for these schools. Sections 4.12 to 4.17 provide operational information about how Education Scotland HMI carry out inspections of early learning and childcare classes and schools, and gives details of the key questions and the core quality indicators used from the self-evaluation frameworks of how good is our school and how good is our early learning and childcare. This section also outlines the 2 models of inspection which are used. The short model, which focuses on 2 of the 4 quality indicators and runs from a Monday afternoon until Wednesday, and a full model which focuses on all 4 of the quality indicators and runs from Monday afternoon until Friday. Section 4.18 and 4.19 note our local ambition and the performance indicator that establishment evaluations should be good or better, and refer members to Appendix 3 for an overview of the evaluations by chronological date of inspection. Section 4.20 provides key performance points. Of note is the 75% of evaluations being very good, and the very good evaluations associated with the quality indicators of leadership of change and ensuring well-being, equality and inclusion. Both of these themes have been a focus for support and improvement for the service since session 2018-2019. This section also notes that any evaluations of satisfactory, whilst regarded as positive inspection outcomes by HMI, result in a report and the action plan being brought to Scrutiny Committee. We're pleased that our reports for 1 secondary and 1 primary school taken to Scrutiny Committee in June 2023 and September 2023 respectively, that very good progress was reported for both. Members are also asked to note that we had 3 further inspections of primary schools in June 2023. 1 was a full inspection and 2 were short model inspections, the last 2 being simultaneous and the week beginning the 19th of June. The reports were not published in time for this committee cycle. However, we can report that all 3 met their ambition of evaluations of good and very good for both their ELC classes and for the school. Sections 4.21 and 4.22 provide information on the national thematic reviews that were undertaken. There are no individual reports or evaluative gradings for the schools and ELCs involved, but the findings contribute to the national reports. Section 4.23 notes that feedback received from these inspectors for all ELCs and schools was very positive, and that in the case of St Mungo's, a further good practice visit was requested. This took place on the 22nd of June, with a further Teams call to finish it off on the 28th of June. Section 5 in our considerations, we're also really proud that inspectors highlighted practice to be shared more widely in all of our schools. This recognises effective practice and approaches which have made measurable impact on children and young people's attainment, wellbeing and achievement, and which inspectors deem to be suitable for national sharing. 2 examples are provided for you from Grangemouth High and from Cairn Primary. Section 5.2 reinforces our continued commitment to prioritising approaches to self-evaluation and leadership, which remain priority areas in our service improvement plan and our strategic programme of professional learning, quality assurance and quality improvement engagement. And in conclusion, in Section 8, we are pleased that the external scrutiny and inspection has validated our internal evaluations and judgments, and that we are able to bring a positive and strong picture of performance and progress across all sectors to you. Our effective partnership approach continues to deliver positive outcomes for our children and young people and remains core to our programme of quality improvement and quality assurance work. We also note that inspection evidence provides only a small part of the holistic performance information that we use across all of our establishments to inform strategic improvement decisions, to identify and share of practice, and to support and challenge as appropriate. Thank you, and your comments and questions are welcome.
Thank you, Rona. Councillor Sinclair.
Thanks, Convener. I'm going to keep this brief. I think I'll start by saying that any teacher, head teacher, member of staff, pupil who can successfully navigate through an inspection the week before the summer holidays, I think is well worthy of a round of applause where that's concerned. And in a stressful time indeed, coming up to the end of the term, but that added level of pressure, and to get that through that with such positive outcomes is well worthy of our commendation. The report, broadly speaking and in general, shows a clear direction over a number of years, leading to such positive outcomes from our inspections. And obviously, as has been mentioned by Rona, it is just a snapshot of the holistic approach that's taken right across our school estate and learning estate. Obviously, there's no room for complacency, and I know how dedicated the teams are in building on these reports and to make further improvements, but that doesn't take away from the significant work which has taken place to get us to where we are now. So thank you very much for the report. Thank you to everybody for their dedication and for their work to get through these and to show a clear improvement and clear foundation of good or better for our learning estate, and I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you, Ian. I'm happy to second the report. I think what we've seen is a consistency of the gradings across the council area, which is very pleasing to see, that there's not that variation, and no mean feat to actually achieve that. We've also seen a commitment to that continuous improvement, to be able to again to push those boundaries, to try and move those goods to very good and those very goods to excellent. And what we've also seen is our schools being seen as leaders of good practice, and I think that is a really positive achievement. While there may be areas where things aren't quite as good as we would like, it's recognised by the schools themselves, and are working on those action plans to address that. So all round, I think it's a very good positive report, and puts us in a very good place for delivering good all-round education to our young people going forward. I will now open it up. I've got Councillor Spears, Councillor Bundy and Councillor Hannah.
Okay, thank you. I must say I'm quite heartened by this report, though I was a bit dismayed when you said that we're above the national minimum level, our standards, but you didn't go on to explain how we can reach the higher standards. And I would imagine there's a further report coming forward with the actions that we're going to take to maybe hopefully one day get an excellent. So I look forward to a further report on how we're going to improve on these. It is difficult, and I agree with Councillor Sinclair, especially when people come in and you are judged. But that's the way it is, and we need to know where we stand. It's like exam results, we need to know where we stand nationally, we need to know in local areas where we stand locally. So I look forward to a further report coming, but I would say congratulations on what you've achieved so far.
Okay, Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Convener. Points 4.4 and points 4.16 again use terms which are quite subjective in terms of what's good care, play, learning, what's a good setting, good leadership. Is there anywhere that we can go to get some context on what is actually being used for this criteria rather than just the headline? Thank you.
Rona.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks, Councillor Bundy. As it says in the report, they're taken from the national frameworks, so you can go online and look up both of these. And if you go on to the Quality Framework for Daycare of Children, School-Age Children, it will expand and illustrate what they mean by these questions and these quality indicators, and likewise in the How Good is Our School and How Good is Our Early Learning and Childcare, they also provide you with the expansion of illustrations of what each of these things mean. So I can't explain them off the top of my head right now. They're quite extensive, but these are great sources for you to go and see what is meant by these questions, what we're evaluated against, what the kind of challenge questions that were asked are, and what the illustrations are to try and get a very good. So these are quite helpful in giving an idea of what people are looking for when they come out.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, convener, and again, welcoming this report. Clearly, it is excellent that the schools all get good and very good. And like you, convener, I look forward to seeing when the good becomes very good and the very good becomes excellent, which I have no doubt will be happening. So congratulations to all the staff and pupils and what they have done there. Also, it's heartening to see that some of the schools, some of the good practices being highlighted nationally. But I wonder if you could say a little more about the ways in which identification of good practice within particular Falkirk Council schools is then shared throughout other Falkirk Council schools, because obviously that is how we move from good to very good and from very good to excellent.
Thank you, Councillor Hannah. That's a very hot topic at the moment. We're just about to have 2 days of our national review on our senior leadership empowerment strategy. And that's the main vehicle for making sure that across all sectors and all of our senior leaders, there are different forums within which they can share the good practices identified from our own validated self-assessments, as well as from external scrutiny. So within that strategy, we have our All Heads of Establishment forum, where we bring together every head of establishment from across early years, primary, secondary and special schools 5 times a year. And we use these forums to share really effective practice and bring together national practice that's of help to our establishments. We also have neighbourhood groups where our senior leaders work together in groups of schools which are demographically similar. There are 7 groups there. And that means the schools who have the same kind of social economic needs and demographics are grouped together, and they find that really helpful, because what might be a need in a development area in Kinnaird may not be the same as a need in a development area in Lyonlees. So these are really helpful in targeting specifically the needs of each of these groups of schools. We also have self-evaluation and self-improvement groups associated with that strategy, and again that brings across head teachers from all sectors into groups who look at curriculum, pedagogy, assessments, inclusion and equality. And these groups are developing and working on things that will be based on good practice and effective practice that we've learned within Falkirk and beyond, and how they can produce resources and practices and strategies that will be of help to the whole system. And that's the work that we're talking about with our national partners tomorrow. So there are huge amounts of forums. Our next steps in that are to try and do even more to bring that good practice to our classrooms and playrooms, so that practitioners at all levels get the chance to work together and take things forward, not just our senior leaders. But there are many ways in which we do that. We also have online platforms and networks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, convener.
Thank you. Okay, are we... Oh, sorry, Alan.
Thanks, convener. Couple of questions, Rona, regarding the early learning and childcare establishments. Now, obviously, this was a Scottish Government initiative which we took forward, and it was ring-fence funding we received for it. Do we still receive ring-fence funding, or is it mainstreamed into the council budget now?
Thanks, Councillor Nimmo. The 1140 expansion budget was ring-fenced, and that's stopped because the expansion is now complete and we're enacting that. The early years budget that we get every year is now mainstreamed, and if I'm not saying anything correct, Mr Greenhorn will correct me.
Gary,
as our financial expert.
Just to confirm to Councillor Nimmo, I think Councillor Nimmo's raised this question a few times, and he's right, the goalposts have changed. At the moment, this is the last year of the money for early years being ring-fenced, 23-24. We wait the decision as to whether or not it will be ring-fenced in 24-25. Traditionally, that will come out as part of the spending review, which usually comes out our way in about November this year.
Right, now obviously we took a lot of staff on to populate this new project. If it's going to be mainstreamed into the budget, then there's obviously a danger that this service could be cut further down the line the way budgets are going, so there's possibly implications for that. There's also a recent statement made by the First Minister in relation to a new initiative around childcare. Now, I'm just wondering what planning the council has done in relation to this, if at all. It's early days, obviously. Is it likely that there's going to be further ring-fenced funding issued to pay for this, for us to take it forward? Or again, is this going to be mainstreamed into the council budget?
Mr Greenhorn.
Okay, thanks, Davina. Some really good points, Councillor Nimmo. I'll try to go through them as best I can in order you raised them. I don't know all the answers just now, but I'll give you the reasons for that. You're right, the Scottish Government have announced some wide-range initiatives to expand childcare and to expand the care of children in terms of preschool, after-school, breakfast clubs, etc. There is some national discussions going on just now with professional associations in COSLA to see what the aim of that is, to see how it will be funded, and to do, probably more importantly, some data assessments, much as the same as we're doing currently for the school meal expansion programme. So that's what the government are trying to do just now, to gather data. They have identified a couple of pilot Pathfinder projects in some council areas that are linked to those councils with high areas of deprivation, and we'll wait to see how that's going to be funded in the future and the outcome of that in the future, because it will influence how the government take it forward in whole or part in the future as well. As soon as we get any further information, we can bring a report to this committee, as we always do, to provide members with information and give them a chance to answer some questions on it.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Thanks, Rona.
Okay, if there are no further questions, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of this morning's committee. Can I thank everybody for their contribution and their attendance? And I hope you have a good week. It's a short week this week. Friday will come round sooner than you think. Thank you.